Yeah, so at BuzzFeed we spend a lot of time trying to work out how technology is changing politics and the effect that it's having. And what we've done for this election is looked at, made a social barometer, which is an attempt to see what people on Facebook, which is used by the majority of UK adults, are actually sharing about the election. And the end result is a very different narrative to the one that we see from newspapers, which overwhelmingly in this country lean to the right. It's a world where Jeremy Corbyn is doing far better than expected. It's a world where these are the evil Tory policies that the government is pushing on people. It's a world where that sort of story goes viral. But the most interesting thing is that alternative sites, sites with names such as The Canary, sites with names such as Evolve Politics, Squawk Box, are starting to reach and go viral as much as mainstream media outlets.
And this allows people who have no media background particularly. I think there's a teacher in the north, for instance, who has huge coverage.
One of the more popular blogs, which has had one post this week, which has reached maybe over 1 million people, which is comparable to the circulation of, say, a newspaper, is a guy who runs a blog called Another Angry Voice. And this stuff is going properly viral online. Now, in the same way that Donald Trump, during his rise in the US presidential election, needed his own media, he saw a new sort of media rise up for it. This is what's happening in this election. I'm not saying that this is going to win over voters. I'm not saying this is going to make a massive difference. This is Jeremy Corbyn supporters who feel they're not represented by the rest of the media, choosing in large numbers to go and look for news elsewhere.
And I'm a crusty old git, so explain to me, you've been talking about your BuzzFeed story focuses on Facebook, and I use Twitter, but I don't use Facebook much. That makes me odd, does it?
Well, if you go onto BuzzFeed.com now... well, if you go
even odder than I was.
If you go onto BuzzFeed.com now, you can see our analysis, but the main thing is that Facebook is reaching a far bigger number of people than Twitter. Twitter is where politicians and journalists like to hang out. Facebook is where the sort of common person in this country likes to spend their time. It's the person who's just got 5 minutes while waiting for the bus to have a look at the news, to take in some info. Twitter is where if you're really into the detail.
Do you recognise this rise of the alt-left, we could call it, rather than the alt-right in Britain?
I think what's interesting about this, there's a lot spoken about fake news, and I don't think this is fake news as such, but what this is it's hyper-partisan audiences. And on your Facebook site particularly, you are in quite an echo chamber. So if you're getting messages which you already agree with, they are going to be hugely amplified. So I think that rise of that very, very hyper-partisan kind of platform is going to eventually have an effect. Now, Jim's right, whether that has a huge knock-on effect in terms of how, like, it moves the needle when people actually come to vote remains to be seen.
And Tim, as a kind of respectable newspaper man in the past, you are tiptoeing gently into this world yourself.
Yeah, well, I used to run Conservative Home as well, which appealed very much to sort of Tory activists, and we just sort of gave the Tory activists, I hope, a very focused news feed on Tory news. But we were quite critical of the Tory leadership at times as well. And what I hear about this, in contrast, is it is just actually giving readers constantly what they want to hear. It doesn't seem to be like an independent journalism here.
So the view is very much from these sites that if right-wing tabloids have been able to do this for years, why can't we take the same tactics and apply them to the left?
By the way, there is a danger as well where you can get into bubbles. So in 2015, we thought that because Twitter was so positive about the Labour Party and the polls as well, that victory was ours. And of course, sadly, that was not the case.
There is more to the world than Twitter, or even, dare I say it, Facebook.